Mayday here. 782, we have the smoke in the cabin. 782, the contact, 119.
Good evening and welcome to the 2025 transmission, November 2025 transmission of Galactic Terrors, the online reading series that scours the known universe for scary stories, strange tales, weird horror, and all sorts of literary oddities from the most imaginative authors writing in a variety of fascinating genres. I am James Chambers, and with me is co-host Carol Gyzander.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.
And we have a great lineup of readers tonight. We're joined by TEEL James Glenn, REBECCA BAUM, and Philip FRACASSI. And you may have noticed I played the wrong intro, which showed a whole bunch of other people that read last week. So my apologies for that. I'm queuing up the correct intro so we can share that with everybody, but it seems to be loading slowly for some reason.
Technology is our friend, and I am wearing my special Time Life Operator headphone because we've been having a lot of feedback, but I think it's because of the magnetic impulses emitting from the sun. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So.
I can't imagine what else it could be. It has to be that. It has to be that.
No cosmic horror. No.
I'm gonna call a redo, and I'm gonna play at least part of the real opening for this month's episode. So hang in there and let's try that again.
Mayday here. 782, we have the smoke in the cabin. 782, the contact, 119.
Well, I think we were missing our headshots on that one.
You know what? I'm really glad to have these authors on the show, and we're going to have a lot of fun.
We are, and my apologies for the technical difficulties. Let's get to the usual banter. Welcome to Galactic Terrors.
Yeah. And if you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to like and subscribe and put comments in the chat on either YouTube or on Facebook Live and ask questions to the authors and tell us what you're thinking about stuff. So,
yeah, and you can look for Galactic Terrors on the second Thursday of the month every month, except when we occasionally do special episodes, and then you can find us. You can get a double dose of Galactic Terrors for the month.
Cool, like getting a double intro. That's always fun too.
Yes,
yeah.
And if you really want some help keeping all of that straight and not missing an episode, you can sign up for our newsletter. And Carol does a fantastic job curating our newsletter and getting that out to everybody. And she does not spam you.
No, which is a nice way of saying that sometimes I forget to send one the day of the event. But that's cool. Yeah. Now, I am amused because Jim did a special episode last week of Galactic Terrors that was about audio narration and had himself and two authors on and the narrators for their audiobooks, which was really cool. But it was really fun to listen to and hear. But he told everybody that I was out lost on the moors in the United Kingdom and such. But actually, right behind me is where I was. I was in Brighton. In the UK for the World Fantasy Convention. So I discovered that Brighton is very much like a Atlantic City for those who know that in the United States. So it was a cool place, and the convention was great. I had a great time. So.
Did they have much of a horror programming track there?
Yes, very much so. World Fantasy is has a good strong horror component to it, and I mean, actually, my Discontinue If Death Ensues anthology was one of the finalists for World Fantasy Award for anthology, and that's a horror one. You know, there was a bunch of cool stuff, so I had a lot of fun.
Very cool. Well, I think people were really excited about you participating in the darts tournament at the Slaughtered Lamb, but
yes, well, you know, my aim is not so good, so I only took out 2 eyeballs, so yeah.
So I think we have some events coming up in the near future, right, that we wanted to call out.
Yeah, we do. Just coming up in 2 weekends is PhilCon for those who are in the New York City or Philadelphia area. That's a science fiction convention that's been going on for many, many decades. And a number of us from the HWA New York chapter are going to be there on programming as such. And they also have a very growing horror component to it. So that's a lot of fun. And you can find more information about that at philcon.org.
Yes.
And then there's another thing coming up in February, My Bloody Valentine, the side quest. It's a horror book sale that's going to be an all-day event with over 30 different horror authors, and that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that.
That should be good, yes.
Yeah.
And I'll give a quick shout out for anybody in my area on Long Island. I will be appearing tomorrow at the Tiny Raccoon Bookstore in Sayville to do a presentation on Long Island urban legends. So this was originally supposed to be a Halloween Eve presentation, and weather led it to be canceled, and we rescheduled. Some open people will come out for a little post-Halloween spooky fun. We'll have candy and free stuff.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So how can you beat that, you know? And as Charles just mentioned, one of the other things we were about to say is the Lich convention coming up in February as well, the Long Island Convention of Horror, which is really fun. They did the first one last year. We really enjoyed it. And so a lot of us from the New York chapter will be there. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's a great convention. It's so all-encompassing of pretty much every aspect of horror you can think of is represented there, from books to movies to makeup to props and games.
Yeah. I thought it was a really nice change from something that was just a book convention. So that I'm looking forward to that as well. So that's cool. And then, of course, StokerCon coming up in 2026 in Pittsburgh, June 4th through 7th. But y'all hear us talk about that every month. So
of course,
it'll be fun too. Yeah. Well, listen, we've got some really cool authors coming in here.
Absolutely. Shall we get on with readings?
Let's jump in. Yeah.
Right.
Want to start us up?
Absolutely. Our first reader tonight is TEEL James Glenn. TEEL was a stuntman for some 40 plus years, but then decided to do something dangerous, become an author. He has dozens of published novels, and his work has been printed in over 300 magazines. His novel, A Cowboy in Carpathia, a Bob Howard adventure, won Best Novel 2021 from the Pulp Factory. He is also the winner of the 2012 Pulp Arc Award for Best Author. His recent novel, Not Born of Woman, was a Pulp Factory finalist for Best Novel, a Seamus finalist for Best PI Novel, and a Silver Falchion finalist for Best Paranormal Mystery. The second novel in the Adam Paradise series, The Walking Shadow, has just been released, and you can find out more about TEEL at theurbanswashbuckler.com. Welcome, TEEL.
Good evening. It's 1939. Adam Paradise, a private investigator in New York, is caught between warring factions of Chinese tongues and is incapacitated. He passes out, and then this occurs. I heard myself reciting the words of Coleridge's Ancient Mariner as if from a distance, like one that on a lonely road doth walk in fear and dread, and having once turned round and walks on, and turned no more his head, because he knows a frightful fiend does close behind him tread. The waves once again bore me away, and the ship I had fled from was lost in the darkness and the distance. As far as I could see was Arctic white and bone-chilling cold, colder than the emptiness that swirled within my heart, that lashed my eyes until they teared. Some years ago, when the images which first this world affords me opened upon me, when I felt the cheering warmth of summer and heard the rustling of the leaves and warbling of the birds, and these were all to me, I should have wept to die. Now I knew not if death would claim me. I blinked. The Arctic white of my memory was not what I beheld. Rather, there was a vastness of featureless vista before me. I stood in tattered clothes on a flat, level plain, the horizon blending to a pale sky that shimmered with what I first took to be the aurora borealis. I realized that the flickering illumination was not the northern lights, but the swirling shapes of 1,000 souls floating in echelon across the sky. The spirits of the departed seemed to flit around and to cast a shadow which was felt, but not seen. This cannot be. My words etched in a frozen mist before me. I am hallucinating this, or is this the land beyond the veil of death? Perhaps I could die. Had I crossed over, gone from consciousness and flesh to whatever came beyond? I held a hand before me. It seemed still substantial, the scarred knuckles of my hand that showed through the torn glove, streaked with blood. I flexed my fingers and made a fist, then turned it over to look at the palm. No phantom shape swirled around me. I was aware for the first time that the shades who had been the souls that made up my body parts no longer orbited me. It was a new experience for me, but what did it mean? Had they moved on to the next phase of existence? Or had I? I think, therefore I am. I breathed the frozen mist of my words falling into my open palm. It seemed as eloquent a statement as any to describe my conundrum. If I could still postulate what form I was, substantial or otherwise, I still was. As long as I still had coherent memories of my existence, then I still existed. I, the miserable and abandoned that was an abortion to be spurned at and kicked and trampled on, still thought. My blood boiled at the recognition of those injustices. But it was true that I was a wretch. I had murdered the lovely and the helpless in my times before my Arctic isolation. I had strangled the innocent as they slept and grasped to death the throat who never injured me or any other living thing. Could anyone expiate such crimes? Was I so different from the gangsters of the world? Though I was innocent when the crimes were committed, striking out like a child in a tantrum, who, feeling hurt, could only reply in kind, was I still not responsible? Kant suggested that each person was responsible for self-redemption, that the human experience was purely subjective, but I was not human. So was I capable of salvation? What did that mean? Even the Sumerian Gilgamesh found redemption after his friend Enkidu's death, which was caused in part by his hubris. He only discovered his atonement when he came to terms with his mortality. Was I less worthy? Was I less willing to find a way to expunge my transgressions? Was oblivion so bad? Would I even know it? I pondered this all as I walked across the frozen waste for what seemed an endless time until I abruptly heard a voice behind me that told me I was not alone. That voice spoke. Miserable wretch. I knew the voice. You have determined to live, and I am not satisfied. I knew not only that voice, but those words, for I had said them to my Creator in the frozen wastes when I had first hoped to die. I turned to see him, Victor Frankenstein. There before me stood my Creator. He was as he had been when I last saw him on the ship in the Arctic, save animated and apparently alive. Then he who had called me into being had been dead. Could it be now I was no more, and that the very remembrance of us both would speedily vanish? Had we come to the same place in the beyond? You shall no longer see the sun or stars or feel the winds play on your cheeks, the image of Frankenstein said. Light, feeling, and a sense will pass away, and in this condition must you find happiness. Yes, But how is it you are here? How could we not be connected, Adam? The thread of your life is connected directly to mine. An abomination in the eyes of God. Hateful day when I gave you life. These words struck me as a knife to my heart. I had read his journals of the 4 months that preceded my creation. He had minutely described in these papers every step he took in the progress of his work. You doubtless recollect your references to my accursed origin. The whole detail of that series of disgusting circumstances that produced me was set in view. The minutest description of my odious and loathsome person was given in language which painted your own horrors and rendered mine indelible. The feature before me, the endless playing, laughed, a dark sound that chilled. I exclaimed in agony, "Accursed creator, why did you form a monster so hideous that even you turned from me in disgust? God, in pity, made man beautiful and alluring after his own image, but my form is a filthy type of yours, more horrid even from the very resemblance." In a fit of enthusiastic madness, I created a rational creature and was bound toward him to assure that, as far as in my power, his happiness and well-being. This was my duty. But there was another that was still paramount, my duties toward the beings of my own species. He waved a hand at me in accusation, which I noted was pale, almost skeletal. Satan had his companions, fellow devils, to admire and encourage him, but I am solitary and abhorred. This brought another laugh from my creator. You urged me to create that, but I refused. And I did right to refuse to create a companion for you, creature. You showed unparalleled malignity and selfishness and evil. You destroyed my friends, devoted to destruction to beings who possessed happiness and wisdom, nor do I know where your thirst for vengeance would end. I cried, my tears cold on my cheeks. And do you not dream? Do you think that I was then dead in agony and remorse? I too suffered in the consummation of my deed. My heart was poisoned with remorse. My heart was fashioned to be susceptible to love and sympathy, and when wrenched by misery to vice and hatred, it did not endure the violence of the change without torture such as you cannot imagine. Nietzsche said, to live is to suffer. To survive is to find meaning in that suffering. I have suffered, and I search for meaning each day. My legs weakened, and I dropped to my knees so that the cold of the snow lanced up my body, and I shivered. In those murders, my crimes are consummated. The miserable series of my being is a wound. Oh, Frankenstein, what does it avail now that I ask thee to pardon me? Yet he was colder than the snow and did not answer. His intelligent eyes bored down with unspoken accusations that drove a spike through my heart. Since my return from the Arctic, I had attempted to expiate my crimes, to live a positive life and to contribute to the world. I had tried to do this, yet could any positive act level the scales from my early existence? Did I even qualify as being alive? A thing of discarded remnants assembled to prove my creator's theories, with no thought to what came next, with no thought what real benefit such an act could mean. Why have you come to torment me? You must pay as I have, the image of Frankenstein said. The gate to the next world is open to you, and you must go through it. My knees were numb from the snow, but my soul was more so. As the words of he who brought me into being flogged me, I wished for that moment of oblivion, to end my pain and move on to the great outer dark. I'm here to help you move on. It is my duty. He stepped forward with hands extended, then placed his fingers gently on my neck. It is better this way, my creation. His fingers tightened on my throat. Numbness rose in my body, and somehow I knew that when the numbness of the cold reached my neck, and his fingers tightened enough, I would fall into that oblivion I craved in my darkest moments. I would end then, perhaps not die, as I was never sure I had lived, but my consciousness would be no more. My sins would be erased as I was, and I would be at peace. Frankenstein stood impassive, his slim, handsome form with a grim, judgmental expression. His gripping fingers slowly tightened. Red spots filled my vision, while dark joy filled his eyes. And you'll have to read the book to find out how he got there and what happens next.
Oh my goodness. Wow, Teal. The only thing I can say is thank goodness I have read the book so that I don't have to like come throttle you just to get the rest of the story right now.
I'll go into hiding so people can't throttle.
Oh, that was amazing. That was amazing. I just want to share something fun to start with. Charles Bruce says, never put Teal on first. Have mercy on the other readers. So Charles is not wrong. You do a fabulous presentation of the words. Now, I'm a big fan of this series, and this is the second book. And in the first one, it starts out very much like a classic private eye story. And, Adam is in New York and starts taking on cases. How did you decide to use Frankenstein's monster as a private eye, and what were you aiming for in doing that with these?
Well, I've always been fascinated with Frankenstein. I've always felt that essentially every film version of it, and I haven't seen Del Toro's yet, but every film version of it boils it down to bad doctor, unthinking doctor and an unfeeling monster who is sort of a victim. But it never really goes deeper into it. And to me, the original book was really a philosophical treatise that was cloaked in an adventure story. And I just thought that the image of a questing being fit perfectly into the general structure of our private investigator. I thought that if I were to be trapped in the Arctic for 164 years, and I wanted to figure out what it was to be human, I would put myself in a position where people who had problems came to me so I could see what human problems truly were. And short of getting a psychology degree, I thought a private investigator would be the correct way to do it. I also I wanted to intersect with a lot of the bad cliches that plague the thing. For instance, my grandmother was a hunchback. And when I grew up, the hunchback assistant sidekick that was in all of these movies, I never viewed them as some strange or horrid thing. That was grandma. And so his first case, he encounters a Romney woman who happens to be a hunchback, who is what propels the first book through. And for me, I wanted to kind of take each of the tropes and stand them on their head, where the Romney were the good guys and the hunchback was the good girl, and maybe the people you think are good or not. And this unfeeling monster, the ultimate outsider, actually has more feeling than many of the people he comes up against.
The ultimate outsider. That's absolutely it. Yeah. Yeah. He's trying to fit in with people, but he's not. And yet he's doing his best.
Well, yeah. It's one of these things where he comes to every circumstance with no prejudice. He comes with a wealth of information because he had lots of time to read. And in the various vessels he found trapped in the Arctic that had libraries, but he has no personal animus toward anyone, and so he literally treats those as they treat him. And I thought, particularly in the world of 1939, which was rife with every kind of prejudice and cliche, many of which have not left us, to throw an innocent, because he truly is in some ways, into the middle of that and see how it interacted. And he would always take the side of the underdog. It's his nature.
Mhm.
And I think, if you look at any child, most of the time, once they get past the initial mind stage, a 2 or 3 year old, they're full of kindness. They're full of wonder. Everything is new and fascinating. And to this 60 or 70-year-old child, he's still fascinated by language and culture and different kinds of food and different experiences. And at the same time, haunted by the fact that he bears with him a tremendous guilt for the violence that he perpetuated. I make this a very direct sequel to the book. In the conceit of the world, it really happened. It was a legend that the Roma know of, and Mary Shelley took the legend and wrote it down. She got some details wrong, but a lot of them are correct. So it very much is directly in line with this Swiss, Italian-born Swiss crazed doctor who created this life form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's an interesting point you bring up, because you deal a lot with the Romani culture in the first book, and in this one we explore more things. I won't get into details yet because people haven't read it yet. But how do you answer or address the idea that people say, "Oh, you can't write a culture that's not yours"? How do you?
Well, I don't try to pretend that the main character is that culture. However, I have Romani friends. I have each of the cultures that he encounters, I have acquaintances in and read extensively on. And because he is the outsider, it gives me a more global view. And again, I try not to bring any of my white guy 20th century prejudices into it, and try to look at each circumstance as, it's the whole thing. What would happen if aliens came down and had no preconceived notions? Well, he's read literature, but he doesn't have any preconceived notions of his own. So he is that alien. And that, I think, gives me a window into writing other than, a giant Scotch-Irish guy, because otherwise I'd be very limited in my writing abilities. But I try to honor every culture that he encounters with as much grains of truth as possible.
Well, if I could, speaking of the 6 foot tall, whatever, I want to show the cover again here.
Isn't it awesome?
Yeah, A Walking Shadow, Paradise Investigations. Now this,
it's a book that was, I have a very good friend, Lisanne Lake, who's a phenomenal painter. And she came to me and said, "I'd love to do a cover for you." And having read the first book, and this is the result of that. And I did pose for it. I wear makeup to cover my scars. And I won't say who posed for the shadow.
it wasn't me.
I feel incredibly honored that I have not just a cover on the book, but an emotional gift on the book that to me is tremendous.
Yeah, I think it's quite a stunning one, and I've seen a lot of folks. We have an interesting question from Amanda Worthington about your reading. She says, "I love your reading voice and the way you switch back and forth between characters. Did you hear the voices as you wrote, or did how they sound come after the words were written?"
I read my work aloud to myself and to my writing group, so I always am very conscious of sound. And actually, Victor would have a slight Swiss-Deutsch accent, but I opted not to do that. And I want to make things confusing. I do a lot of accent work, a lot of voice work. I was an actor as well. But I do hear the voices. I very much hear the voices. And it helps me to write the dialogue that feels succinct and correct. I have to be careful when I'm writing like Scottish characters that I don't write entirely in burr so that no one can read the damn stuff.
Yeah, so what does this say? Yeah.
Reading about loud, but I do hear the voices in my head. actually, before I write scenes, I play them in my head like a movie, and sometimes we'll do variations until I find the version I want to write.
Mm.
And then it still changes when I'm actually putting the words down, but within a parameter I've already seen in my head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. And I just have one final comment from our audience. Angela says, "Whew, I think I've been holding my breath this entire time." And lot of great response and appreciation for it. So I personally love the fact that you've mixed the philosophy in with adventure stories as well. And in this one, I think you did an interesting thing by starting in this liminal state instead of starting in the private investigators thing. So people can pick this up and read it without having read the first one, but it's even better with both.
I try to make each book self-contained because I one of the things I disliked about some book series is that you start in it, you have no idea where the hell you are, and they never refer back to things. So I always fill people in as they go forward. But it does build, and each of the books in the series, my intention is to make them a different book. So I'm not reading the same formula each book. The first book is a fair play mystery. The second book is a little bit more adventure, and moves more into the metaphysical. And the third book is considerably more metaphysical and psychological. And the fourth one, I get to it, I hope, will actually be a 50s noir murder mystery. So I'm within that, the characters can grow, but also he's constantly exploring. He still has no idea who he is or why he is, and his life mission is to find purpose.
Mm-hmm. And just our last question, Charles is wondering, how many do you have planned?
Well, I have no idea what my publishers will let me do. I sold the first 3 books on a 3 chapters in an outline. I have the 3 books. I have short outlines for them, and when I finish the 3rd book, which I'm deep in the weeds on now, I will propose hopefully 3 more, and I like those. I could conceive going on as one would say. Adam's got a long life as a character. I could, really, and the thing is, I date them. Each book is a specific historical date with specific historical events, and I may take him. I'd like to take him all the way up through World War II. Currently, it begins February in 1939. The second story takes place in September, in May of 39, and the 3rd story takes place in October of 39. Cool. So they're tied to very specific real world events. I consider Adam to be what they call hidden history. I'm not going to alter any of the real world history, but he fits in between it.
And that's one thing that I've always appreciated about your writing is that you are a superb researcher and historical referencer. That's not the best word, but you do a great job with it. Yeah.
I'm one of those crazy people who screams at the History Channel. So, and I don't want to do that to anyone else.
That's fair. Yeah. Well, listen, what I'd love to do is have you come back at the end and talk a little bit more about what you have coming up. But thank you so much for sharing your words and your reading. And it was really great chatting with you.
I'll send it.
Yeah, cool. And I would like to also introduce our next reader. REBECCA BAUM is a novelist and ghostwriter. With her latest novel, The Brood, she wades into the wonderfully troubled waters of horror. Her prior book, Lifelike Creatures, was longlisted for the Crook's Corner Book Prize Foundation's 2021 Best Debut Novel set in the American South. A native of rural Louisiana, Baum feels that she has almost earned the right to call herself a New Yorker after more than 25 years in the city. She lives in Greenwich Village with her husband and favorite karaoke partner, Gary. More about Rebecca at REBECCABAUM.com. Rebecca?
Hello, I will be reading from my recently released novel, The Brood, which is, broadly speaking, a feminist body horror with elements of eco horror and a dash of folk horror. and a slew of periodical cicadas. The protagonist is Mary Welton. She is a cutthroat New York City attorney. She is a bit of a fixer. She is sometimes rather arrogant, not concerned with being well-liked, concerned with doing her job well. At the start of the novel, she's leaving the funeral of her mentor in upstate New York. Her GPS goes offline. She gets lost in a remote area, collides with a swarm of periodical cicadas, wrecks. When she next regains consciousness, she is in a rustic cabin attended to by a strange, physically imposing woman known only as Girl. So at the start of this reading, Girl is kneeling next to Mary, who's laid out on a pallet, still feeling very groggy. And Girl is the first person to speak. You said you'd come back with the brood. Girl shook her great head. Mostly believed you, but her eyes shone. Sometimes I didn't. Mary tossed the wet compress aside. So the poor ding-dong thought she was someone else. That would explain the hangdog stare of affection. She sat up and straightened her blazer. Ma'am, I think there's some confusion. The woman chuckled and swatted her knee. I ain't no ma'am. Just Girl, like always. Girl, Mary repeated. Possibly the most unimaginative nickname ever adopted. She extended her hand. I'm Mary. I've got something to show you. Girl leaped up with surprising ease. Something in her voice, a childish pleasure, set Mary's teeth on edge. Girl moved toward one of the cabin's few non-utilitarian items, a small painting on the far wall. Mary peered through a window at the rear of the room. A wall of trees bordered the yard, entry point to the dark wood that ascended the mountain range. There was no sign of the road where she'd left the Mercedes. My car. I assume it's outside? Mary asked. The impact had been violent, but she had no memory of the airbags deploying. Perhaps the car was still drivable. The woman seemed not to hear the question. Been a long time. Brood's come twice, she said, removing the painting from the wall. She returned to the pallet, head bowed, and presented it to Mary for inspection. Up close, the painting was more like a tapestry, a muddy swirl of rust and brown at the center of the thin cloth. In a few places, the paint had hardened into clumps. But I should have kept faith, the woman continued. You always said I had ants in my pants. You can put away your craft work. Mary glanced briefly at the tapestry. I'm not whoever you think I am. I need my phone, please, and my car, now. Her pumps were tucked alongside the pallet. She slipped them on and moved to stand. Craft work? Girl pressed the tapestry closer, forcing Mary to remain seated. Her face flushed and the timid smile returned. My first blood, Mama. Saved it for you. Mary recoiled. Her gaze dropped to the tapestry. Like a gruesome Rorschach, the outline of a moldering pair of underwear, stained and crusted with old blood, sharpened into focus. Girl traced a finger along the edge of the frayed cotton. The men you used to bring here. You said after I got my first blood, I didn't have to do that no more. But you left before the blood came. Get that away from me, Mary snapped, repulsed by the underwear, but more by the bottomless yearning that burned in the woman's dark eyes. She stood, rising to her full height, inhaling deeply to stave off dizziness. She was almost as tall as Girl. Her shoulders were just as broad, even with the woman's girth. She fixed Girl with a chilly stare. I am not your mother. I'm Mary Welton, an attorney from New York City. I have no children. Girl stumbled backward, as if blown by the force of Mary's words. Her face crumpled, her dark eyes flooded. I appreciate everything you've done to help me, Mary said, softening her tone. No need to be unduly cruel. But it's getting late, and I'm expected. People, my staff, will be looking for me. As she spoke, Mary tested the truth of this statement, running through the people who normally populated her universe. In fact, no one would be looking for her. By now, she should have been alone on her private island, organizing her office overlooking an ocean awash in the setting sun. Everyone in her life knew her time in isolation was inviolable. Now, please, take me to my car, Mary said. She strode past Girl and pushed open the screen door leading to the front porch. The evening air was bracing after the cabin's close confines. Unseen insects thrummed a steady beat from the forest depths, a pulsing, high-pitched buzz. A battered, decades-old Ford pickup was parked a few feet away beneath an elm tree. A cluster of small amber husks, perhaps dried leaves, gathered near the front tires. Or just give me a ride to town if that's easier, Mary called to the woman. Still wobbly, Mary paused to clutch one of the wooden poles supporting the porch's overhang. Again, she scanned the landscape, searching for the road she'd followed into this God-forsaken nowhere. The chances of a hospital in less than 100-mile radius were slim. But within what she imagined was a region riddled with opioid users, a walk-in clinic was likely. A footpath wound past the truck and continued for 100 yards to the edge of a quarry. A huge bowl with blasted rock walls gouged 30 feet into the earth. Rain and mineral runoff had collected at the lowest point, forming a cloudy aqua lake. The footpath continued along the lip of the quarry, then ascended abruptly to a dark, cave-like opening in the mountain. Just above the cave, supported by a thin crust of earth, a tree pressed lush branches against the purpling sky. A plump black insect landed on Mary's sleeve as she stepped from the porch. 6 jointed legs sprang from the dark thorax. Its iridescent wings were flecked with orange. The eyes, bulbous red orbs, smoldered in the light of the setting sun. She recognized the bug, a cicada from her days at the orphanage. A bright green variety had frequented the old oak trees surrounding the yard. She glanced back at the truck tires, realizing that the amber husks were in fact molted cicada shells. Mary cocked her thumb to flick the bug from her arm. Pain exploded in her shoulder joint as her arm was yanked backward. "What the fuck?" she shrieked. The force spun her around, her body rebounding against Girl's breasts. "No children?" Girl hissed. Her mottled face swam into view, streaked with snot and tears. "Like you told the men I was your sister." The woman pounded her own skull, her roars echoing up the forested slopes. "Wouldn't claim your one and only daughter. From the forest, the chorus of insects grew louder, as if sympathetic to girls' anguished rage. "I'm not your mother," Mary gasped. Powerful fingers dug into her biceps. Her knees buckled. "All I did was wait and wait," girl said, each word weighted with anguish. "Who kept this ground safe while you was gone? Who made ready for the brood?" Girl gripped Mary's lapels and hauled her down the porch steps. Mary stumbled, blindly punching at girl's flesh. Her designer pumps skimmed the ground, plowing through cicada shells and catching in the moist earth. She strained to see the space in front of her. Girl seemed to be heading for a mound of earth with a hobbit-like door. "You get the root cellar, Mama, like you used to do to me," girl sobbed. She flung open the small door. The door frame scraped Mary's face as she was tossed into the shadowy interior. Shelves of dusty mason jars flashed past as she tumbled to her hands and knees. She knelt in the dirt, struggling to regain her breath. The door slammed, followed by the creak of a rusty lock. "Padlock still works, Mama, after 27 years. How about that?" Thank you.
Rebecca, thank you. That was wonderful. Really terrific.
Thank you, Jim.
So you left out one of the horror subgenres. You also have some survival horror elements in this book.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
And this is your first horror novel, correct?
This is my first horror novel, yes.
Yeah.
And
So
actually that was
oh, go ahead.
well, I was gonna, because I am somewhat new to horror, that subgenre of survivalist was pointed out to me during a podcast. So even though I've of course seen and read those kinds of stories, I didn't know that specific term for that subgenre. So,
well, I was going to say you blended so many subgenres here. Why did you decide to start out so easy? It's a balancing act, and you pull it off brilliantly.
Well, thank you. And again, like some of those subgenres came to my attention after I had written the book. So, for instance, I went to StokerCon and realized that I could call this eco horror.
So it's great. And so, all right, let's talk about the biggest piece of this. Let's talk about bugs, cicadas. Yes. What was your attraction to cicadas, or your interest in writing about them in a horror novel?
I started writing the novel before I thought about including the cicadas. I was really trying to get, what was going to be the source of the quote unquote, the antagonist, the monstrous presence. And so I was just kind of casting about, keeping an open mind. I already had Mary, I already had girl. It was in September 2020. We're in the pandemic, and the news is full of not all of the news, but I kept coming across mentions of Brood X and this kind of cicada apocalypse that was, going to befall the Northeast. And I of course had heard of cicadas before. As was mentioned in my bio, I'm from rural Louisiana. I grew up with the annuals and seeing the shells molted onto the oak trees, and hearing that, that hypnotic, mesmerizing song. But I had never heard of the periodical cicadas, and was fascinated by the fact that they dwell underground for 17 years, in some cases 13. Before emerging one spring, something in their internal clock triggers them, and they while they're underground, they've never seen another cicada. They truly live in solitude. And then they all burst from the ground because they're in the same area. They've been sort of nesting and gestating in the same area. They burst from the ground in what is essentially a mass orgy, see each other for the first time, procreate, lay eggs, and die and become compost. I just was really fascinated. And I also watched this short film called Return of the Cicadas by Samuel Orr, which really captured the beauty of these things and the poignancy, but also kind of the creepy crawly aspect of it as well. So I just was like, how can I somehow include this in the story? So that was the beginning of it.
That's great. Well, yeah, I think as a kid growing up in the summers, cicadas were ever present, especially in the late summer, and you'd find the molted shells, which were just so monstrous looking and cool.
Yeah.
And they're so big. If you caught a cicada, you could just crawl around on your hand, and it looked so odd. You could really study it. So I've always had like an interest or fascination in cicadas. So it was an extra layer for me in your book was that aspect of it. Right. So you've done a lot of research. Is there any truth to this? Was the thing we told each other as kids, is you could tell how hot it was by how loud the cicadas were. They got louder on hot days. I don't think it's true, but I don't know what you found.
I do think I recall coming across something like that, like maybe that they are sensitive to temperature change for sure. Yeah. I mean, in fact, the temperature of the soil is what triggers them to emerge. As far as the sounding, I believe they get louder in the evening. So maybe that is triggered by not heat, but that would be cooler temp. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, but I'm not going to die on that hill. I really have to look it up to be sure. So
yeah. So well, it was just that thing we told each other. Wow, the cicadas are loud. It's really going to be hot today.
Well, I will tell you, it's only as far as periodical cicadas, the males are the ones that really make this, ear-shattering sound. And it's caused by these little accordion-like structures they have under their wings. Mm-hmm. And where they open and close the accordion, a tympanum, I think it's called, and, just make this incredibly loud noise.
Very interesting. Well, you created two really memorable characters, Mary and Girl, and they're so different and at the same time sort of the opposite ends of a spectrum. And Mary in particular is a fascinating protagonist who is hard to like at times, but you really have to be sympathetic to her at other times. So can you tell us a little bit about how you developed those two characters?
I had to do a lot of work in the developmental editing process to get Mary likable enough. I got a lot of feedback from the publisher, like Mary's great, but we got to make the reader care about her so that, they'll keep reading. But I wanted to explore, this really tough as nails, older, kind of war weary, not weary, but I guess weathered and war tested female character. We see men in these roles a lot of times, and they can be not soft, not compassionate, very hyper focused, and that's sort of accepted. That's a position of power. They don't have time to be kind or pat people on the head. But with women, of course, it's maybe they get judged a little more harshly in those kinds of positions. So I just really wanted to experiment with this kind of crusty, tough older woman who, really gets the job done in the domain of power. And, but it does come at a cost. She had a lot of trauma in her childhood. And so she's killed off that softness. She's killed off that compassion. And she has convinced herself that she has no need to be in relationship with other human beings, that she's, she even has a private island. I mean, that, is how far she's gone. So, and then Girl, of course, who was, interesting to hear Teal talk about his Frankenstein character and the sort of tabula rasa naivete. I mean, in some ways, Girl is that kind of character too. She has grown up, essentially alone after her mother abandoned her. She is feral. She is, has not had a lot of contact with society or other communities. And she yearns to be in connection. So, in some ways they are two sides of the coin.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, we have a question from Richard Quist. If you've thought about a movie version of the book, who do you imagine or wish would play Mary and Girl?
That is a really, really fun question. Gosh, hopefully it'll actually come into discussion in real life. I love the actress who played Helen Pierce on Ozark. I thought she was just a fantastic. She was an attorney also, so I think she would be great. The actress who played Darlene Snell, also on Ozark, she could be wonderful. Girl, the only person I thought of, Charlize Theron was in that film Monster.
Yeah.
And she, really kind of embodied a similar sort of feral ferocity that I think would work well for Girl.
Fascinating. Yeah, that would be an interesting combination to see. So, well, Rebecca, thank you so much for reading and for talking about the book. And we'll have you back on with everyone in a little bit to talk about what's coming up next.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Jim.
Okay, let's move on to our next reader, Philip FRACASSI. Philip is the Bram Stoker and British Fantasy Award nominated author of the novels A Child Alone with Strangers, Gothic, Boys in the Valley, The Third Rule of Time Travel, and The Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre. He is also the author of the story collections Behold the Void, Beneath a Pale Sky, and No One is Safe. His stories have been published in numerous magazines and anthologies, including Black Static, Best Horror of the Year, Nightmare Magazine, Interzone, and Southwest Review. Philip lives in Los Angeles, and you can find him on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky, or visit his website at www.pfracassi.com. Let's welcome Philip.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me. I know I'm supposed to be promoting my new book, Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre, but honestly, a 10-minute reading from that book is hard to do without spoiling anything. So instead, I'm going to read from this little novelette, which is called D7, which came out earlier this year from Shortwave. And the quick setup is a couple, Paul and Diane, are driving across the country, and they get a little lost, and it's dark, and they end up at a roadside honky tonk, and thinking to get maybe some directions and a beer. And when they get in there, things seem a little bit odd. So I'm going to read one chapter from that little novelette, and if you're interested, you can read the rest at another time. Chapter 3 is what I'm reading. Here you go, folks. A long-faced man near the middle of the room says, gesturing toward Paul and Diane, I got a table for you. He cackles a bit, wipes theatrically at a nearby table and its adjacent chairs with a bare hand. Last one, I think, so better get it before it's taken. Jesus, John, the woman next to the long-faced man says, don't be cruel. He spins toward her, presumably his wife or his date, and she shrinks back. I ain't being mean, he nearly screams. I'm being motherfucking helpful. Okay, she says, eyes filling with tears. Take it easy, fella, another man says from a couple tables over, arms thick as pythons beneath a tight black t-shirt. No need to make things worse. The big man stands, faces Paul and Diane, and nods toward the empty table. But he's right. You should take a seat if you can. We're nearly out of chairs, and the floor, well, I think a chair is better. Paul nods slowly. Sure, anything is better than the floor, of course. He gives Diane a, what the hell is this, look, but she only shakes her head. As they walk toward the lone empty tables, skirting between the backs and shoulders of the other patrons, Diane notices a few odd things. Well, odder things in regards to the people seated all around them. For one, she notes that no one has food. There are no half-eaten steaks, bowls of melting ice cream, no cheeseburgers with French fries, no plates at all. Even stranger, there are no drinks. Well, there are drinks, but not drinks. At every table, each person seated has a glass of water in front of them. A few sip from their glasses as Paul and Diane pass by, but there are no beers, no cocktails, no whiskeys or gin and tonics, just water. As Paul pulls out her chair, it's only then she realizes the other thing that's been bothering her, something she hadn't been able to fully put her finger on until she got close enough. Everyone in this room looks completely, undeniably exhausted. Even more, they stink. The whole room smells of unwashed bodies, as if she and her husband had stumbled into a locker room filled with hockey players straight after a double overtime game. After they sit down, Diane has to fight the urge to tuck her chin and give her own pits a quick sniff, but then sees the bartender walking toward them, looking haggard and tired, carrying 2 pint glasses filled with water. He sets one down in front of each of them, wipes his hand on his red flannel shirt. All we got left is tap, but it's okay to drink, he says. I'll show you where the sink is, back behind the bar. When those glasses are empty, you'll have to refill your own. Sheepishly, he adds, I have a little pride left, so I always bring the first round myself. It's still my place, damn it. And well, he trails off as if not knowing what it means that it's his place, or if such a thing even matters in the scheme of things. You're happy? Diane asks, feeling a wave of sympathy for these people. Yeah, he answers. Welcome, I guess. Could we get a couple beers? Paul asks. Budweiser's fine. Happy squints at Paul strangely as if he was speaking a foreign language. You don't want beer, friend. Drink that water. He leans in close. So close that Paul fights not to pull back from the stench of the man's body, his breath. But if you want something hard, just help yourself. On the house. What about food? Diane asks. She isn't hungry, but wants to understand what's happening here, why everything is so strange. Rationing, he says matter-of-factly, as if it was almost went without saying. You'll get your portion. Less food for us, someone says from the far end of the bar, interrupting their conversation. Happy turns, hands ringing. It ain't their fault, he snaps. He looks around the room. And I'll treat them the same as any of you. Many folks nod, others only stare, blank-eyed, uncaring. Anyway, he says, turning his attention back to Paul and Diane, it'll likely be starting up again soon, so I better go rest my feet. As Happy walks away, Paul turns in his chair, calling after him, Starting? But Happy doesn't answer. He shuffles further back behind the long oak bar and sits himself down on a stool, head bowed, as if taking a nap. The song on the jukebox fades away, and for the time it takes to inhale a breath, a dead silence settles over the bar. Diane looks around and notices that everyone is staring at the jukebox, as if waiting to find out what the next song is. Paul and Diane, without understanding why, also turn and look at the machine. Diane imagines the jukebox as a large, multicolored face, its lone eye a broad window showing 100 black records. A darting mechanical arm flitters among them, sorting, choosing. Just below the eye are rows of song titles, each one given a code that you enter to play a particular record. And below that, 2 rows of glowing buttons, dimly lit letters and numbers that could easily be mistaken for a grinning mouth of yellow teeth. As they all watch, the machine begins to change the record, even though no one has gone anywhere near the thing. Someone must have paid for multiple songs, Diane thinks, as the machine readies to play a new record. Suddenly, music bursts from the jukebox's grilled speakers, so shockingly loud that Diane gasps and Paul jerks back as if slapped. The music seems to come from all around them, the bass so heavy Diane feels the vibrations in her skull. Paul looks at her, wide-eyed. "They must have hidden speakers?" Diane says, nearly yelling to make herself heard over the noise, over the song. And just what the hell song is this anyway? She thinks, unable to place the rockabilly tune. She has to admit it's catchy, despite the insane volume at which it's being played, easily 10 times as loud as the previous song they'd heard. Around them, people begin to rise from the tables, and the room fills with the sounds of scraping chairs and shuffling feet as the patrons move toward the dance floor. "Popular song?" Paul says, eyeing the people as they walk by. The dance floor begins to fill up, and still more patrons continue to stand and make their way forward. "I guess so," Diane says with a small laugh, but something makes her uneasy about the way they're all herding forward. "And this song, there's something tickling my brain. How do I know this song?" She's about to ask Paul if he knows the name of the loud, rollicking, catchy tune when he extends a hand across the table, palm up. "Want to dance?" he asks. Diane looks at him warily, trying to remember the last time he asked her to dance. Our wedding? Paul is not a dancer, and neither, truth be told, is Diane. And yet, this music, this song, something about it makes her want to get up and move to it, to hold her husband close and dance to it. "Sure, why not?" she says, smiling. But Paul's not smiling. Even as she places her hand in his and squeezes it tight, he doesn't look happy or eager. He looks confused, she thinks. But then they're standing to follow the others toward the packed dance floor. Diane studies the empty tables as they pass by, turns and looks behind to see, to her shock, that all the tables are empty now. Popular song indeed. They push themselves between other bodies, all of them swaying and bumping, a few clutched in shameless intimacy, a few dancing by themselves, swinging their hips, arms over their heads in what, at first, appears to be a sort of ecstasy, but as Diane studies the movements, they seem less fluid and more jarring, the couple's embraces less romantic, less sensual, and more desperate. The way one might cling to a loved one, knowing the building around them is coming down, and there's nothing to do but wait for the inevitable. After a few minutes, Diane grows tired. Her feet begin to ache, and she's lightheaded from the heat of the bar, the press of the bodies all around them. She studies Paul's face and notices that he's sweating and pale, his movements jerky and forced, the opposite of someone enjoying themselves. "Do you want to sit?" she yells, the room booming with the song, now layered with the boisterous, raspy voice of a country rock singer, belting out words and phrases that are meaningless to Diane's ears. Paul looks at her and nods. "Yes, please." She nods in return, and they keep dancing. A few moments pass. They look into each other's eyes. Paul's are wide and frightened, and Diane assumes hers must appear dreadfully similar. "Paul, I can't stop. Can you stop?" Diane shakes her head, looks around and sees that the others are watching them with strange looks on their faces. Pity. "What is this?" she yells. "Jesus, Paul!" Diane is scared, bordering on hysterical. Suddenly, she feels trapped in her own body, as if something else is in control of her movements, her actions, and she is nothing more than a spectator. She wants to scream, to run. "Help us!" Paul yells, staring at each of the others surrounding them. But now those heated, sweating faces are turning away, not wanting to help, not wanting to see. And still the music plays, roaring from the voracious, lustrous jukebox, and the heat of the room grows suffocating. Bodies jostle and bump into each other, into Diane, and she begins to pray that she will simply faint away, that this is all a bad dream, that it can't possibly be happening. And then she screams in horror, in frustration, in fear. And Paul yells at the others for help, for God's sakes, help them. Hearing his pleas, Diane could swear at that exact moment, the music from the jukebox grows louder, as if it's enjoying this, as if it is the one in control. And that's the end of that chapter.
Ooh. All right, I'm dying to ask you, the song that sounded so familiar, was it maybe like Hotel California?
I get that question a lot. I just, you know what? It's not a specific song. It's just like it's a rockabilly ruckus country tune with words that no earthbound resident can probably understand. And yeah,
resident,
whatever it is, it gets people dancing.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Wow, that was wonderful. Well, we do have I'm going to jump to a question specifically about D7. This is from Richard Quist. What was the inspiration for D7? Did you have a bad experience in a diner or roadside tavern?
No, I've never had a bad experience in a diner or roadside tavern. The inspiration is, it was one of my favorite stories is Horace McCoy's "They Shoot Horses, Don't They?" And which is about a dance-a-thon that takes place in I believe the 50s or 60s, and I always thought that story was oddly scary, and there's something kind of horrifying about it. And then I had an idea about I can't say it, but because it would be a spoiler, but about how the jukebox would be perhaps have some sort of power and over the patrons of this honky tonk. And so I kind of was like basically taking that old Horace McCoy story and mashing it into a horror shell, and that's basically what D7 is, what came out of that.
Very cool. Yeah.
Wow, cool.
Well,
yeah, I picture in that movie like their feet are bleeding, So yeah.
And that's just the beginning.
Yes.
They just arrived, so yeah, it gets steadily worse from there, unfortunately.
That's great. Well, we had one comment about the song from Jason Murphy. Red Hot Chili Peppers' "Can't Stop" was the song he heard in his head when he first read D7.
Yeah, I think it's whatever, and that's I hesitate to even say what songs or what musician or whatever, because I do like the fact. I like the idea of people putting their own soundtrack in there.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
I think it's part of the fun with this story is you kind of like put your own music to it. I think the closest I've come to explaining it is sometimes I think like a little John Spencer Blues Explosion kind of vibe is that sort of like erratic rockabilly honky tonk kind of rock music. Yeah,
moving. Yeah,
that's great.
Very cool.
So Autumn Springs Massacre. I'm sorry, I'm getting the title wrong. I'm sure.
I know it's a mouthful. Autumn Springs
Retirement Home Massacre is your new one. This is just out.
Yeah.
David Perry just finished the book, found it thrilling, made it hard for him to put down. So you didn't read from it, so just give us a little bit of a taste of what the book is about, so people know.
Yeah. I'm sorry I didn't read from it, but it's just so hard to read a 10-minute excerpt from that book and not get.
Oh, I understand.
It's pretty tightly plotted. So it's kind of what it sounds like. It's about a serial killer in a retirement home. And there's a core group of characters, primarily Rose Dubois, and her friend Miller, and their friends who when these killings begin, they begin to suspect that maybe these aren't natural deaths that are happening to their acquaintances and friends and neighbors. So they begin to investigate, and over the course of the investigation, the horror, or as you will, the killings kind of ramp up and become more bizarre. And so that's basically what the book is about. And it's really about Rose. It's really Rose's story. It's sort of her arc. And she's kind of like she has sort of a dark past that she's trying to like get through, and all these things that are happening to her and her friends kind of shape a lot of how she thinks about life, and it sort of evolves. She sort of evolves as the story goes on, which was kind of my the impetus for writing the book was to write Rose's story.
Cool.
Terrific.
I'm wondering if you've been hanging out with Todd Kiesling and you guys are planning all these things in the older folks' homes and retirement communities. So
I think it's just kind of one of those things, or it's the current zeitgeist, I guess.
And it's something that's relevant for a lot of folks in this day and age. There's more and more folks.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with the fact that as horror writers who grew up with King and kind of like as we're getting older, I think maybe we start to think about things like that, and our parents are getting older, and they're maybe, and my in-laws are in a retirement home, and my parents recently passed away.
Mm-hmm.
I think you begin to think about end of life stuff more in a very real way, and I think that probably has some impact on maybe when we think about what would be a good story. Maybe that's something that, as a 50-plus-year-old, that's something that's probably more in line with relatability for me right now than it would be when I was like in my 20s or 30s. So I think that's part of it too, is we're just kind of growing into those older characterizations of life.
Yeah, and I think it makes perfect sense to consider that loss of control or loss of agency can be a very terrifying and powerful emotion in horror. So
For sure,
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
All right. Well, we have a comment and a question from Ray Costa. Autumn Springs was my introduction to FRACASSI. Excellent novel.
Oh, thank you.
Cool.
Ray would like to know, how do you come up with your character names? What's your process?
I don't really have a process for character names. I try not to be repetitive. I try to use names that are distinctive, so that when you hear the name, you can put a face to that name, as it were, or you immediately know who I'm talking about. I think I've read some books where there's sort of like there's a lot of similar names. I'm reading a book right now, and there's like a Beatrice and a Baxter and a Bobby, and sometimes it's hard to kind of keep them straight. So I try to make my names distinctive, so that who I'm referring to. And then sometimes it's fun to use like names of people that I know in real life. I kind of like mix and match things just for a bit of a nod to my friends or people I know. So I did a little bit of that in this book as well.
Cool. All right. We have a question from Brian Matthews. For Autumn Springs, you nailed the air of loneliness and isolation of aging and dying. Did you do any research for this, since the feel was so spot on?
I did some research for the retirement community. Before I was a full-time writer, I used to work in film and TV production, and my job was to work the locations that we filmed at. So one of the locations I spent some time at, I did the first season of a TV show called Yellow Jackets, and one of my locations for that show was a retirement community, and so I was there for like a month, dealing with prepping for the crew, filming the show. So I got to know all the residents, I got to know the layout really well, and so a lot of that research and a lot of the little trivial things about how a retirement home works, how it operates, where the nurse sits, where the theater that's in the book, the tape lines that are different colors that show the residents how to get to the medical center or how to get back to their building or how to get to the dining hall. Those are all torn from my experiences at that retirement community. As far as like the loneliness and stuff like that, that's just, the isolation and what have you. That's just something that is just more artistic. It's just something I make up and try and get the mood right. There's different ways to do that. But yeah, as far as the retirement home community, yeah. And my in-laws were actually, at the time I was writing this book, my in-laws were moving into a retirement community. So they would actually like save the the packets of the different places that they were looking at for me. So when we'd go up to visit them, they'd have like 3 or 4 packets I could like look through, and I would steal things from them. And so that was really helpful as well.
That's cool. Were they interested in reading the book or not?
Oh yeah, no, I think they're both. Yeah, they're big fans. My in-laws are big fans. Yeah, they read all my stuff. They're very sweet about it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Cool.
And, where'd it go? Hold on a second. Richard Quist has a question. Rose is absolutely fantastic. Any plans to revisit her in the future?
Maybe. I do have a outline for another story that takes place at Autumn Springs. I can't say whether or not Rose is in that story because I can't say whether or not Rose survives the book, but I do have something else planned for Autumn Springs, and but I don't know if it'll ever come to light because you need 2 to tango, and I would have to find a publisher that wanted to publish it. But it's being the book is being developed into a feature film. So I was like, well, if nothing else, maybe I'll hold on to that idea for a movie sequel if I never get the chance to publish the book. Yeah.
Cool idea. Yeah.
Or maybe I'll just like self-publish a novella or something. I don't know. We'll see. I have kind of a big workload already, so I don't need to add.
No, really? Wait a minute.
I do have an idea that would be really fun that I hopefully will revisit one day. Yeah.
Cool.
That'd be awesome.
Following up on that question, David Perry asks, outside of Rose, who was your favorite character to write / develop in Autumn Spring?
I'd say it's a tie between Igor and Stan. Those are my characters. The Beatrice sisters were also really fun to write about. Those are these three sisters who everyone thinks are witches, and they get up to some shenanigans. There's a lot of colorful characters in the book. There's 80 residents. And I think I described most of them or a big chunk of them. So, but I think Stan is probably the one I would say, because Stan has this, he's a conspiracy theorist and he believes in aliens, and so he, the killer sort of preys on that gullibility and of his, and in a very mean way. I was very fond of Stan. I was also very fond of Tatum Bird, who is a resident who suffers from dementia, and is sort of Rose's close friend, who she confides in these kind of one-way conversations because he doesn't fully understand everything she's telling him. And Tatum was a very interesting character to write because my father suffered from dementia, and I had to take care of him for several months, during that period, and a lot of him went into Tatum Bird. So that was kind of it was very cathartic to write about Tatum. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we have one more question from our audience, and then we'll bring the other readers back on tonight. This one is from Jonathan Lees. I remember way back when Mother was releasing. Your output and productivity since then has been impressive. What is something you taught yourself about staying on track day to day?
Well, thank you, Jonathan. That's very nice of you to say. I've always been pretty driven. I've always had a pretty good work ethic. I've always been a self-starter, as it were. I've owned my own business. I'm not college educated guy. So everything I've done, I've sort of done on my own, through hard work and diligence and what have you, and persistence. And, the bottom line with writing is when I was able to become a full-time writer, a couple of years back now, maybe a few years back now, I kind of was the fulfillment of this lifelong dream, to be able to write full time for a living. So once I achieved that goal, I think, basically what fuels my work ethic is, fear, that I don't want to ever lose what I've gained, worked so hard to gain. And so I think I'm just kind of constantly, pushing myself because I'm so afraid that I'm going to lose it one day, if I don't work hard enough. So, I'm pretty much, the sad truth is I'm pretty much driven by fear, and desperation. So that's kind of the real answer, unfortunately. But I do enjoy it. I do enjoy what I do, and I just don't ever want to. I want to keep doing it. So, got to keep working hard.
Jonathan's response is, "Love to hear it. Fear drives us all," in all caps.
Yeah.
Philip, thank you so much for the reading and for the conversation. We're going to bring on Teal and Rebecca to rejoin us. Hey.
This was so much fun because three very different stories. Yeah.
That's great readings. Thank you.
I feel like I should have done something rural, though. I don't ever want to go out of a city now,
There might be bugs. Yeah.
Hey,
Or sketchy diners.
Yeah.
Yeah. True.
So let's talk about what everyone has coming up next. And I feel bad asking that because I know you all just have books that just came out.
Yes. So it's not like we're saying that's inadequate. Yeah. But,
what's next? What can we look for from you in the future? Or if you'll be doing events, where can we find you? Teal, why don't you start us off?
I've got a military thriller called Call Down the Lightning that'll be coming out beginning of the year from Crossroad Press, dealing with PTS and a transnational merc group that are not nice to us. And I have one of my Jack Silence stories, Corpse a la carte, which will be coming out in Kursova magazine in the spring issue. and a bunch of short stories in various places. But that's sort of the stuff that's on the horizon.
Terrific. Rebecca, how about you?
Sure. So no events currently planned, but hopefully we'll have some more. To stay in touch with that, just follow me on Instagram. And I also I'm taking another stab at a different genre, or a first stab at a different genre, romance. I just finished a manuscript. My agent is sending that out now to publisher. And then I'm plotting my next horror novel. So, and will definitely be driven by fear.
That's good news.
We know, all us writers know. We all know. We're terrified all the time.
Right? Somebody might read it, and then what? Oh, no.
Is that Maya?
Yeah, Philip.
So I just released, I have like props. I just released Gothic, just came out 2 days ago. This is the reissue of my novel Gothic. And this Child Among Strangers, the paperback edition, just came out last week. So I've kind of been like on top of Autumn Springs Massacre, which just came out a month ago. I've been touring for the last month and a half, so I'm not doing I'm pretty much done for the year. I'm just grateful to be home. And then next April, I have a new horror novel coming out called Serafina, which is you can pre-order now. That's coming from Clash Books. And then in September of next year, I have a new story collection called Traps and Specters, which is going to have an introduction by Matt Dinneman, who wrote the Dungeon Crawler Carl books, and that's Shortwave Publishing. And then in April of 2027, Gothic 2, The End, will be out, assuming I get it done in time. So I'm currently working on that. And then in summer of 2027, I have a new novel coming from a Big Five Press, who I haven't announced yet. It's going to be like a mystery thriller called The Blue Butterfly. So lots of stuff coming up in the next couple of years. So hopefully folks will enjoy all those stories.
You are busy.
Cool.
That's great.
I will throw out one thing. I forgot to mention that I'm hopefully going to be reading with Horror Writers New York chapter in December in the Shade Bar in Brooklyn, in the West Village.
Yes.
For anybody who's in the city and wants to wander in and have a great time being scared for holiday.
Yes,
on
indeed.
Sullivan Street. You can be scared on Sullivan Street on December 7th at the Shade Bar.
Yeah.
So, Philip, I'm curious, quick question. Have you ever written, drawing on your background in film and TV production? Have you written stories in that world?
In film and TV, just one. I wrote a story. Well, I think actually a couple. But I wrote a story called Overnight that takes place in a parking lot of a where like a movie crew has parked all their vehicles. It's about a security guard, and so that was one that I definitely drew on my experience as a location guy in film and TV. But yeah, no novels as of yet. I did write a novel called Happy Holly, which is about an actress moving to Hollywood, but that hasn't been published. So it's an older novel, so I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day. But other than that, no. I would like to do it at some point, just because I have so much experience in film and TV production, but nothing planned as of now. Nothing other than what I've already got out. Yeah.
Terrific. Teal, have you done that? I'm curious. I know you've written about some of your like your Ren Fair experiences, but have you ever written on your TV work?
My Maxie and Moxie books take place in Hollywood in the 1930s, and they're a husband and wife detective team that gets involved with weird cases. Sort of the X-Files meets Nick and Nora Charles. And I have a short story in a book called Hollywood Kills that Alan Orloff edited coming out. And it's about a murder on a set of a low-budget movie that's just outside the TMZ in Hollywood. Which is the 3 mile zone that after that you got to pay unions higher to get out. And I've dropped bits and pieces of the Hollywood stuff in there, but I haven't written anything about a contemporary film set except for the short story "Making Your Own Luck" in in Hollywood Kills book. It's kind of cool that the premise of the book is they went and got people from different parts of the Hollywood experience. They have a location scout, a caterer, actors, and each of them wrote a short story about a crime in their part of the world. And I was the stunt guy who wrote about a crime on dealing with stuntmen. So
Oh, cool.
it's kind of cool. Yeah, it just came out from good Lord. I forget who it came out from. I gotta say, I was hitting the head too often.
It's called Hollywood Kills.
Hollywood Kills. Yeah.
Yes.
Angela has a really good point here. So many books to add to my endless TBR
Please,
pile.
I'm going to die in a book avalanche from books of people I know.
What a way to go.
I should say, now that I think about it, listening to Teal talk, I just kind of realized The Blue Butterfly actually is kind of it is a Hollywood novel about an act. So that one is probably, it's not an industry novel per se, although it does involve an actress, but it's definitely, but it is set in Hollywood. So
everything we've lived leaches into what we do at some point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And Jim, how about you? What's coming up for you?
Well, I jumped the gun a little and mentioned my event at Tiny Raccoon Books tomorrow evening at the top of the show. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah.
And I know there's a comment up here somewhere if I can find it, but it got postponed and now it's taking place apparently on
Brian's birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well.
It's a great little bookstore for anybody who's anywhere near Long Island. It's a really cool little bookstore. There are no raccoons involved.
Unfortunately, yes. But yeah,
it's BYO Raccoon. BYO
Raccoon. But I'll be giving away some free chapbooks, and we are going to have candy, and we're going to have spooky Long Island urban legends. I'm teaming up with another local author, Trevor Firetog, and we're going to be covering all the hits, the Amityville Horror and the Montauk Monster and the Lady of Lake Ronkonkoma and so on. So it should be a fun time. If you're in the area, come on out.
Yeah,
word is that Trevor is actually a cryptid himself, but you know.
Yes, there's some Firetog.
Yeah, that's scary. Yeah, there's lots of creepy stuff out on Long Island. That's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Carol, how about you?
I have two short stories coming out in anthologies that are both being launched at PhilCon weekend after next. One is a sci-fi story in A Future for Ferals, which is a charity anthology to help support cat rescue, which is something near and dear to my heart, from Eastbeck Books. And the other one is Beyond the Revolving Door, which is about choices that we make and all. And that's from Celestial Echo Press coming out. So it's going to be a busy, fun weekend at PhilCon. So if anybody's in the Philly area, come jump in and see us. And a bunch of other people from our chapter will be there as well. So
it always bums me out to be so far away from where everything happens. I'm all the way over here in Los Angeles, and everything happens on the East Coast, and I always miss everything.
Oh, wait a minute. Poor you living over there in California. Oh, yeah.
It's sunny every day and so boring.
Oh, well, you were just over here at the Horror Readers Weekend, and I missed you because I just got home from World Fantasy Con, so I was sorry to miss the event because those are great events. Yeah, I was
supposed to go to Cincinnati this weekend, but after my 8-hour delay in Charlotte trying to get home from New York, I figured I better not push it. Until they get the flights going again. Yeah.
Then I think that's impacting a lot of authors. Mary Robinette Kowal just had to miss the KGB reading in New York City with Ellen Datlow and Matt Kressel because her plane got canceled. So fingers crossed that this, we're out of that soon. So
let's hope it gets back on track. I can't imagine trying to do a tour like that while all that's going on, Philip.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I was just finished my Cincinnati, which would have been tomorrow or this Saturday, was my last event. I started touring on October 3rd. So luckily, I didn't get affected. I got it under the wire before everything went to hell. So yeah.
Great. All right. And you can all join us back here on December 11th for the next Galactic Terrors transmission for some haunting holiday season horrors, perhaps. We have some authors in the works. We just hadn't quite firmed everything up by tonight, so we'll announce those very shortly, which is a great reason
to sign up for our newsletter.
And find out who's coming and when. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, listen, everybody, this was terrific. So many cool stories. I really appreciate you sharing your words and also talking with us. I feel like we had some great conversations tonight. And thank you to the audience who tuned in live and asked great questions. And thank you for the folks who have listened to this recording later. We really appreciate your support. So.
Great. Thank you for having me.
It's good to
All
be
right,
here.
everyone. Have a great evening.